So last week, my buddy Max from the Guitar Max channel put up a video demoing one of the EART guitars. And in that video, on top of giving me a mention for a recent demo that I did for the same company, thank you, sir, for that. I appreciate it. And he said one thing in that video that I found very, very interesting. And that, paraphrasing anyway, something along the lines of, the quality of gear that guitar players expect to receive these days has risen, is much, much higher than it used to be. And I never thought about it that way, but it's absolutely true. And I got to thinking, there is absolutely no excuse for guitar companies, guitar manufacturers, putting out a subpar product these days at any price point. At any price point. Regardless of who the front runner was that kind of changed our way of thinking on this, be it Harley Benton or Firefly or even EART themselves, it doesn't matter. 10S guitars, Wolf guitars, AIO guitars, EART, there's any number of guitar brands out there, and there's more and more coming out all the time, that are producing top-notch quality instruments. I'm not just talking about beginner instruments. Top-notch quality instruments for all skill levels that are making the big companies, the Fenders, the Gibsons of the world, look really, really bad for not putting out better products in the same price point. This is the EART guitar that I demoed recently. This is a model called the TL380. You can buy this guitar brand new on Amazon for $3.99, and not just this finish, but all kinds of finishes. You don't like this color, there is half a dozen others to choose from. In the demo video that I put up just a couple of weeks ago, and I'll post a link to it down in the description, if you want to check it out. I said in that video, and I meant it. I absolutely meant this. I would put this guitar on par with the $1,000 Charvel models. It is that nice and that well built. At some of the lower price points, the 10S guitars, I've demoed one or two of those. The Fireflies are a little bit more inexpensive. All of those companies are putting out phenomenal products at the price point. Meanwhile, while they have improved, and I'll get to that here in a second, the big name guitar companies, again, the Fenders, the Gibsons, etc., even their lower price point products are not keeping up with products, like the brands I just mentioned, whose prices are even lower. I was in Guitar Center this past weekend, and just for the hell of it, because I knew I was going to be making this video, I decided to pick up, a Squier Affinity Strat that they had laying around, just because I wanted to see what kind of quality it had. And unfortunately, I didn't have a camera with me, so I couldn't shoot it. But that was again, they've improved from what they were 10 or 15 years ago, but there is no excuse for spending $200 or whatever that guitar is costing now, $200, $250, something like that, when you can get a far, far better quality instrument for that much or less. And it's not just guitars. The same is true with amps and pedals. Take Joyo, for example. Joyo, who are, I believe, at least a little bit larger company, they're able to keep their production costs down compared to some other companies, but still they're putting out fantastic products. You're probably familiar with these amps by now. This is Joyo's Bantam series. This is the second. They're now on their second generation of them. The first generation was just a single channel, or at least one channel with shared knobs. Only had 3 knobs. Now they're coming out with dual channels with 6 knobs, and a foot switch, etc., etc. Anyway, these things come with a preamp tube in them, and beyond that, they're solid state. These are 20-watt amplifiers. Probably not going to gig with them if I had to guess. But for a solid practice amp, through the right cabinet, this thing sounds great. All of the Joyo band amps that I have tried all sound excellent. I've demoed a few of them. I haven't gotten to try them yet, but there's a company called Monoprice who are producing all tube guitar amplifiers they are selling dirt cheap on Amazon. I think they've even got a 50-watt, maybe even a 100-watter out now. And compared to just about everything else in the industry, they're selling very, very inexpensively. Again, I have not personally gotten the chance to try them yet, but I know Max has demoed a couple of them. Daryl Braun has demoed a couple of them on his channel, and I have heard nothing but positive things from anybody that has gotten to try them out. Remember this pedal I demoed a few months ago? NUX Recto Distortion. Basically a dual rectifier in a box. Remember this one that I demoed not too long after that? The Plexi Crunch, Marshall in a box. Both of these pedals sound excellent, and both of them cost under 50 bucks. Now, how much you think that this one actually sounds like a Marshall and this one actually sounds like a Mesa, that's beside the point. That's not what I'm driving at here. Because even if you don't think that they sound like the amps that they're designed to emulate, regardless, they still are excellent sounding distortion pedals that a lot of people can use in a lot of different situations for not a lot of money. Back to Joyo, remember them? This is their Rat clone. You know, their first one anyway. I think they've got a couple. But this is the first one. Not only is this a Rat clone, this is a clone of three different Rat pedals. This pedal cost under 40 bucks. And it sounds phenomenal. After Joyo sent this pedal to me, I kept it because it sounds awesome. It's a great pedal. You know, so we have all of these companies who are putting out great products these days. They just don't have the marketing behind them. That, you know, again, the Gibsons, the Fenders, the the Bosses, the big companies. You know, I mean, they've been marketing themselves for years. Everybody's familiar with those names. They don't have that advantage, but they also are a lot smaller and they don't have the overhead that the big companies do. You know, Fender, for example, they've got factories in multiple parts of the world. They've got giant payrolls. They've got again, multiple factories full of manufacturing equipment. A huge payroll. I mean, they've got great big business expenses that some of the smaller companies don't have. EART guitars are not nearly as big as Fender. Therefore, they don't have the same amount of overhead that Fender is going to have, and they're able to sell their products at a much cheaper price point. You know, and there's your Econ 101 lesson, because you're going to find that in literally any industry in the world. But how much of this is really due to overhead? You know, and that's the question that I constantly find myself asking. And here's a couple of examples why. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Fender entry-level brand guitars, the Squiers, if you will. In recent years, Fender has actually put a lot more effort into making sure that those guitars are set up and ready to go right out of the box than they once did. They used to just be, barely playable, maybe, right out of the box, sharp frets, and they were garbage guitars, especially by today's standards. Absolutely garbage guitars. No semi-serious guitar player would ever take Squier seriously. However, they have since learned that because of their marketing, so many new guitar players are starting out playing Squiers. It's not that they're focused on the beginner market, but they know that a lot of those beginner student guitar players, they want that student's second guitar to also be a Fender. So what they're trying to do is, again, put more effort into the setup and and that sort of thing for those for those new guitar players right out of the box, so that when a couple years later, when that same student says, "I'm ready for a new guitar, I want another Fender." That's what they want. And I actually find that to be very, very brilliant marketing. That said, I still think that what $400 with Fender will get you is nowhere near what $400 will get you here. Not even close. There are exceptions. You might remember this guitar that I demoed last year. This is the Kramer Baretta Special, and I will absolutely give Gibson credit on this one, because this guitar I paid $180 for, brand new. $180. And for $180, I think now they're like 200, 209 or something like that. I think maybe they've gone up a little bit like everything else, but generally speaking, for $200, you got a pretty solid guitar here. Decent fretwork, a decent playing guitar. And what I said in the demo video, I think, the bridge is a little cheap, but again, it's $180. I swapped the pickup out on this thing for, my buddy Rich at Voodoo Pickups sent me this prototype pickup of his. So, I pulled out the original pickup and put this one in it. That said, if I wasn't going to demo Rich's pickup in this guitar, I would have left the original in it. It was not, the original pickup that came in this thing is not horrible. The Epiphone line. I've been on record on this channel many times recently saying I think that the current Epiphone, the current line of Epiphone guitars is about as nice as they've ever been. The Epiphone guitars right now are really, really good. But again, or $500 with an Epiphone, I think, in a lot of in some cases anyway, is still inferior to $400 or $500 in a brand that's a lot less recognizable. Now, this is not a video advocating against the big names in the industry. You all know I am still a big fan of many big names in the industry, a lot of them. I still play Gibsons, I still play Ibanez, I still play Schecter, I still play BC Ritz. Those are all, BC Ritz being under, recent ownership changes and stuff, but those are all big brands that have been around for decades. There's a lot of people out there that just like brand recognition, and I get it. I say all the time that, as good as I think the Epiphone guitars are right now, there's still nothing wrong with people like me who prefer the higher end Gibson line. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But, back to my original point, there is no excuse for any guitar company out there, or pedal company, or amp company, or what have you, for putting out a subpar product at any price point whatsoever. If so many brands that most people have never heard of are able to pull it off, there's no reason why the big name brands shouldn't be adjusting their practices to be able to meet that demand. Thoughts, comments down below. Let me know. Adios.